Hey everyone, welcome to Where Art Meets Architecture 4. It's been 5 years since we've released a tutorial and I'm so excited to bring you some new material. This tutorial features some of the most amazing homes I have ever photographed, some of the most incredible locations in Los Angeles, and we spent over a year filming it on location, traveling across the country, and filming in the studio to make the lessons complete. My career has progressed massively from the last Where Art Meets Architecture tutorial, and there's a ton of new material to learn. So not only am I going to take you on location, show you how I do things in the field, we're going to of course go into the post-production and the equipment. I'm also going to be interviewing some of my most trusted colleagues. These are people that I've worked with for years on some of the biggest jobs of my career and people who run giant architecture firms hiring photographers all around the world. These people have been instrumental in growing my career and I hope you'll be able to learn some amazing stuff from them as well. Of course, it wouldn't be a Mike Kelly tutorial if we didn't talk about personal projects. And in this Where Art Meets Architecture tutorial, we're going to be talking about my first ever major publisher coffee table book. I spent about 6 months photographing 50 projects all around Los Angeles for a book called New Architecture Los Angeles, and it was an incredible personal project that has already paid dividends for my career. So like I said, I'm going to teach you everything about that. We're going to dissect it behind the scenes. We're going to take you on a shoot, and I'll show you everything that goes into the publishing process. So with all that out of the way, let's jump right into it. This first chapter here talks about the equipment I use on location on a day-to-day basis. After that, we're going to go right into our first location lesson at a brand new build condo on the west side of Los Angeles. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the equipment that I use to create my photographs. Over the years, my kit has evolved significantly for a number of reasons. As I traveled more and more, I started shedding gear left and right. Now this is because not only is it expensive to fly with a lot of gear, you've got to pay for those checked baggage fees, but it's also a royal pain in the ass to fly around the world with 7 or 8 pieces of luggage, especially when you get stuck in customs, the gear misses a flight, or you arrive to some new destination and not only are you dazed and confused, but you're dazed and confused pushing around 300 pounds of crap. Another reason I significantly changed my kit throughout the years is because I have been dealing with a significantly worsening back issue, which culminated in January of 2020. Now, back in 2010, I herniated a disc snowboarding, and that thing just got worse and worse and worse until last year when I could literally not walk without pushing a little walker around. It was insane. I had a surgery for that in January of 2020. Luckily, it's feeling much better now. But I've gotten used to working with minimal gear. Anything I can shed to save weight and get rid of the massive amount of bags and cases I was carrying around has been done. This is also a reason why I have an assistant with me on every job. Not only are they invaluable for helping you work through problems on set and dealing with the client, but they can take a lot of the schlep away from you, or me in my case, because I really still can't lift that much. So even though I have less gear now, we've been able to come up with some very creative solutions to getting the best photos with less. It's definitely worth the trade-off when you compare it to traveling with tons and tons of cases of gear and going home after every gig completely screwed up from carrying way too much stuff around. So let's dive into everything I use these days. The first and most important thing is going to be a tripod. I use a tripod on every single shot, and I have an old saying, the tripod is your sharpest lens. So if you're going to spend a lot of money, here's what I recommend you do it. I personally have 2 tripods. I use a Really Right Stuff TVC 33. This is a beautiful tripod, and whenever people ask me what tripod they should buy, I say buy once and cry once. This is like $1,300, but it's made out of carbon fiber. It's pretty light. I have beat the ever-loving crap out of this thing, and it keeps on going. It's just a fantastic piece of gear. I also have a smaller version of this. This is also a Really Right Stuff, but it's a lot more compact. Great little travel tripod. They make a number of different sizes, but this one fits perfectly in my bag, and when I'm traveling light or out on the street, it's a great solution. On top of it, I have a Arca Swiss P0 hybrid ball head with the Arca style clamp. This is actually more of a traditional ball head, but it's a bit of an upgrade from the Manfrotto ones. It has this twist locking mechanism, which prevents it from sagging. If you've ever used a ball head, you know as soon as you get the composition set and you tighten it, the camera kind of lurches like that. This solves that problem. A great little piece of kit and very light. My favorite tripod head is this Arca Swiss Cube. This is a bit of an engineering marvel from Switzerland. Arca Swiss is a fantastic company doing beautiful work. This allows me to level the camera from basically anywhere and then swivel it around. It's got 2 built-in bubble levels, which make it super easy to make sure that I'm perfectly level both in the vertical and horizontal plane if necessary. And it's just an absolute joy to use. It's something I'm touching on every photo, even more than the camera, so I had no problem splurging on this. I think this is anywhere between $1,200 and $1,500 depending on the options, but again, for every single photograph, I don't mind paying a little extra to get quality. So in addition to my tripods, I'm also using this guy here. This is a Platypod Max, and this is actually a really cool piece of gear. What this allows you to do is put the camera almost anywhere. So it's got these little feet that you screw in. You can take your tripod head off of your tripod, attach it to the top of this, and so if you need to put your tripod on top of a counter, or you need to put it somewhere that a tripod doesn't fit, I find this extremely helpful. It comes with a strap. You can tie it to a tree. You can tie it to a telephone pole. If you've ever had yourself backed into a corner and you don't know how to get your tripod in there, can't recommend the Platypod enough. I'll give you a quick setup. So I'm taking the head off the old tripod here, and you can screw it right onto that plate, and you have an instantly mountable camera anywhere. Very helpful for low perspectives, or for even shooting on top of a car, putting it on a counter on top of some books to get the exact perfect camera position. So let's talk about cameras now. I have been using the same two cameras for about 5 years. My two cameras of choice are a 5 DSR. I love the 50 megapixel output from this camera, plenty of detail and lots to crop from. And this is my backup, which is a 5D Mark III. This is about 22 megapixels, I believe, and produces some great files. I think you can pick these up for like $1,000 now. I think camera technology is pretty mature, and I very much believe that at this point in time, almost any camera is going to be a great camera for architectural photography. We are on a tripod. We don't need super fast shooting. I do recommend that you go full frame just so you can get the full coverage of those tilt shift lenses, which we use on pretty much every shot. Now, people still debate the merits of cameras until the cows come home. The more I do this, the more I really think they're just like guitars. Pick one you like, run with it. I don't think there's any merit in debating which is better at this point. They all do amazing things. On both of these, I have Pro Media Gear L brackets. Those connect to the Arca style clamps on both my ball heads. I can go horizontal or vertical. I do recommend you get a 90-degree bracket. It's super easy to switch like that. So let's talk about lenses. My favorite lens, and the one I use more than any other, is the Canon 24mm tilt shift. This is the second version. There was an original version that came out maybe 20 years ago. This, I think, was updated in around 2010. This is an absolute workhorse. It has been beat up, repaired, fixed again, broken, repaired, fixed again, and it keeps on ticking. I use this on about 95% of my photos. My second most used lens is the 17mm tilt shift, and this is an absolutely beautiful lens, a really incredible feat of optics. It's super wide and has a relatively low barrel distortion, which makes it a great lens for architecture. I use this maybe 5 to 10% of the time. I find that when you need it, no other lens will do, but it can be easy to get a little bit out of control with the shift on this. So it's a very delicate lens to use, a bit more difficult than the 24, but when you have it and you need it, nothing else will do. My third most favorite lens is the Canon 50mm tilt shift. This is a 2.8 and also has a macro function. This is great for those long detail shots. I think it came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago. The optics are insane. It is definitely the sharpest lens I own. It's a bit trickier to use because that longer focal length is harder to keep everything in focus. But when it works and you can create some great detail shots, wonderful, wonderful lens. This is the most expensive. I think it's around $2,500. So expensive, but worth it if you need those cute detail shots. Lastly, I have a 1.4 extender. Canon won't tell you this, but it works perfectly fine with all the tilt shifts. This will turn a 17 into about a 22. A 24 into a 35, and a 50 into, I think, like an 85. So you really have the full range of focal lengths, and even though I don't have any zooms, I can pretty much cover everything from ultra wide to telephoto. Now, if you don't own a tilt shift, you may be wondering what lens you can use. You can still use a conventional wide angle lens. You've just got to be very careful that you don't tilt too far forward or up so that when you correct things in post, you're not losing a ton of megapixels on either side. I do recommend that if you want to pursue architectural photography seriously, you make the investment in a solid set of lenses. Whether you're a Nikon shooter or a Canon shooter, there's great options available for you. And you can adapt a lot of these to Sony, to Panasonic, to whatever you're choosing. I also have a few polarizing filters, 77mm and 82mm. These fit on my lenses, and these are used to cut down reflections. I don't use them all the time because what happens in a lot of the modern homes I shoot is the polarizing in the glass messes with the glass in the windows. That tempered glass shows up and has this really strange pattern through it. And so you got to be very careful when you use these. They only come out in very specific circumstances. Still useful to have in the bag, but just be cognizant of that. Now, these are all manual focus lenses, so when it comes to focusing, things can get a little bit tricky. This is a Hoodman Loop. This actually allows you to put this up to your camera screen and get a magnified version of the back of your camera pretty much in real time. It's just a big magnifying glass that blocks out all the sun, so you can focus even when the sun is bright overhead or straight in your face. I'm always shooting tethered, and for almost 10 years now, I've been using the CamRanger. They recently came out with an updated version, the CamRanger 2, which has a bit more functionality and works with a wider variety of cameras. I think it works with Sony and Fuji, Nikon, Pentax, everything. So this is the CamRanger 2 here. If you have one of those new cameras, you'll probably have to use one of these guys, and it does work phenomenally well. I still actually prefer the original CamRanger. You can find these for like 90 bucks on eBay. The reason I like this is the battery life is just insane. It will go all day. And this is a little bit clunkier to use personally. The range is pretty good, but I don't find the app and the interface as robust as the first one. In my opinion, this is essentially the perfect piece of gear to tether with, and so I'm going to buy these things until I can't find them anymore. I'm going to take them with me in my bunker. You can use either the CamRanger 1 or the 2, but if you're looking for a cheap option to get started, the 1 is the old reliable workhorse. So when I am tethering either to an iPad mini or an iPad Pro. Some people use laptops. I prefer the iPad. First of all, it costs way less than a computer when it breaks, and second of all, because I love being wireless, and the CamRanger allows me to do that. I hate any unnecessary wires. This is also a lot lighter and comes with a lot less accessories than a computer, which again, really helps when traveling. I can also, with the CamRanger, just give my client an iPad and let them follow along as we're working. I always also travel with a few of these Anker USB batteries. These are just backup power because everything we use sucks battery like you wouldn't believe, and it always sucks to be out in the street or somewhere else and have a USB powered little dongle or something fail. So whether I need power for my iPad, my CamRanger, anything else, I can hook this up. Also good to power up your phone because we're all addicted and on them all day. I occasionally do a little bit of drone photography. I personally use the Mavic 2 Pro. I love how compact this thing folds up. It's great for not only traveling, it weighs a lot less, but it raises a lot less red flags when you're going through customs. If you have some multi-case DJI Inspire setup, you're going to be flagged a little bit more often than with this. This fits in a shoulder bag. You don't look like you're a real pro or anything, and the image quality is actually really great. I think it delivers a 22 or 23 megapixel RAW file, and like I said, it just fits in the bag, very nondescript. I like that it's a really small, tiny piece of kit. Here's the controller for it, and I have a few accessories here that allow me to hook the iPad up to it so that I don't have to work off my phone screen. If you're going to be using drones, I got my license from the FAA. It's about a 2-hour process to take that test, and the studying part is relatively easy. There are guides all over YouTube, but obviously if you're going to be flying drones commercially, make sure that you're properly licensed and you have the correct insurance for what you're doing. Now, in terms of lighting, I used to travel with a much bigger lighting kit. As I said, I got sick of schlepping everything around, so I have migrated entirely to the Profoto B10. This thing weighs like 3 pounds, comes with a nice removable battery, and will last all day on one charge. What I also really like about it is it replaced the previous Lowell GL1s that I used to use. So the Profoto B10 is really great because you can use it as not only a hot light through the modeling lamp, but also as a flash. Now if I turn this on here, I'll give you a little demo. There it is in flash mode. And I can turn on the hot light and adjust the power of the hot light. But not only can I adjust the power, I can change the color temperature from warm to cool and back. So I can color match exactly to the temperature of the scene if I'm shooting some warm tungsten light or some bright daylights like we have here. In addition to the light itself, I've got a few modifiers in here. I have some pieces of cinefoil. I keep it folded up. Rather than carry around a 20-pound roll of cinefoil, I will take pieces out and fold it up to reduce weight and make them pack down a little bit flatter. So this is great for blocking light. This is a heat-resistant black matte foil, which can reduce color casts, turn off lights that you can't turn off, You wrap it in exit signs, stop them from blooming. Very handy tools here. I've also got a number of gels that I use to warm up my lights. I find that 95% of the time I am warming up light rather than cooling it down, so I sacrifice some gel and some bag space just to bring warm gels. I've got different color temperatures. I've got a quarter CTO, I've got a full CTO, and a half CTO. Now, in the past, I used to bring separate light bulbs to replace lights on set. I have predominantly moved to shooting with the lights off in residential spaces, so that's not so much of a problem. And in commercial spaces, it seems with the advent of LED technology, almost every new office has wonderful color temperature. If anything, it might be a little bit cool, but at least it's going to be matched, and you're not going to get these weird fluorescent colors. Everything now is LED, which has made our lives a lot easier. Now, in terms of lighting stands, I actually use my mini tripod as a lighting stand. I extend this as far as we can go, and rather than carry these really heavy aluminum or steel light stands around, I just put the B10 right on top of this tripod. And I have managed to get away with that for a little over a year now. Again, in the interest of reducing weight and saving my back, anything I can do will help. If I need to get really high, myself or my assistant can hold it over our head and replace basically a 12 or 15 foot light stand. Now, let's move on to some of the more practical things. As we are photographing homes very often, I've got these really useful sliders so that I can put like a heavy couch or a table on a slider, and I can slide it across carpet with these plastic surfaces, or across hardwood or a more soft surface with these little covers, little booties that slip over. And so these are great not only for saving my back, but for making sure that you don't damage the house that you're photographing. I also have a bunch of booties when we go into very nice, expensive places, and I don't want to be the one who scuffs the floors first. These come in big handy, especially when you're working with a homeowner who is a little bit precious about their home and wants to see you kind of go on the extra mile to protect it. The booties come in handy. They're like 20 bucks or a 500 pack on Amazon, so a good investment. Lastly, I've got a little rocket blower for dust. If I have sensor dust I need to get rid of, sometimes I'll just turn the camera upside down and blow it out and make sure that any big particles of dust are off the sensor when I'm shooting, because sometimes they show up when I'm shooting tethered, and it's better to just get it on location and deal with it in post. One thing I always also bring is a massive black cloth. You can buy 10 by 20 foot backdrop material on Amazon, and I use that often for controlling reflections. Unfortunately, I don't have it now because on the last shoot I did, we brought it out to clean the floor and it got totally disgusting and it's stuck in the washing machine at my home, but it's a super useful piece of equipment. So my actual bags are Think Tank. I use a Think Tank Logistics Manager and a Think Tank Airport Takeoff 2.0. Again, these are very expensive but very dependable bags. I have taken them with me all over the world and they have lasted almost 10 years at this point. So one of my secret weapons that I haven't mentioned yet is first class valet baggage tags. These are really helpful when either the overhead bins are full or you're traveling on one of those tiny regional jets and they try to do everything in their power to get you to put your bag under the plane. If the agent sees this on your bag, she'll just give you the old wave right on through. It is such a giant hassle remover because I hate nothing more than having to put $20,000 of camera equipment underneath the airplane. You never know what's going to happen. These also make sure that when you do get off the plane, your baggage is delivered first, and that is wonderful. So that wraps up my gear section. As you can see, it's relatively simple. I'm so glad I've been able to pare things down and reduce the load that I've been carrying. It's a lot easier to travel with just one checked bag than 7 or 8.